So we've talked about your front-end domain, your back-end domain. Before that, we talked about your strategy. Now we need to start talking about the tools. Now, when we talked about the back-end in the last lesson, we talked about SMTPs, right? Fancy term for there's a tool behind every email marketing software that actually does the work. The email marketing software you're using, whether it's high-level or ClickFunnels or ActiveCampaign or MailChimp, whatever it is, behind those tools is always going to be something called an SMTP. You think that when you craft your beautiful email and you choose who you're going to send it to and you hit that button to send it or you time it or whatever, schedule it, you think you're sending the email. I did too. You're not. You're requesting for the SMTP to send your email. And they, by the way, may say no. Because remember, they're one of the players and they have rules and there's score being kept, right? So there's lots of ways your emails cannot get sent. But just understand that just because you hit the send button doesn't mean that you're actually sending the email. It means you're sending the request to send the email over to the back end of that software that you're using. So Mailgun, SendGrid, Amazon SES, there's lots of them. And I'll just use Mailgun as an example. When you send your email, let's say through High Level, it goes to Mailgun. And if you ever looked at the logs in Mailgun, you'll see that it just says accepted. They accepted your message request. They haven't sent it yet. They got it. They're thinking about it. I wonder if I should, no, I'm just joking. I mean, it usually happens really, really freaking fast, okay? But accepted just means that they got the request. They accepted the request into the logs. And then the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to say delivered, hopefully. So there's going to be two logs now. There's going to be one log that says it was an accepted message. And then the next log is going to say it was delivered, hopefully. It might not say delivered. It might say soft fail, meaning we tried, but the line was busy maybe, like the server was busy. They couldn't get through for some reason, and so they're going to try again in a few minutes. And most of those back-end softwares, those SMTPs, they'll try to send, if it soft fails like that, they'll try to send every so often for a period of time, like maybe 8 hours. Mailgun will try to send your email for about 8 hours. They do it in like 10 minutes, then they do it again in 15, they do it again in 20, and they just keep going, and eventually they'll wait like an hour and try to send. But after 8 hours, it'll time out if it can't get through, and then it'll just be called permanent fail. So here's where it gets interesting. Permanent fail doesn't mean you can't send to that person. It just means that message permanently failed. They tried and tried and tried and it couldn't get through. So now they're done trying and that message permanently failed. So a permanent failure is kind of like a giant category of something else we all kind of call bounces. When I get into the lesson on bounces, I'll go through all the different types. We'll talk about which ones actually matter and we'll go from there. But just understand that when you're hooking up an SMTP on the back end, something like Mailgun or SendGrid, they're sending the email. They're pushing the email out through their servers to all the masses that you're trying to send to. And then what's also happening is, let's say Sally Smith on the other side of this equation says, I'd like to reply back. Where is that reply supposed to go? So there's something called reply routing that happens on the back too. And in the case of High Level and Mailgun, you get to determine what that reply routing is. There's several different ways that you can play into that. But if you're using something like ActiveCampaign, then the reply routing means if Sally Smith replies to the email you just sent, then her reply is just going to go straight into your regular, whatever your from address was, like your regular Gmail account, whatever address you sent from. Replies are not coming into ActiveCampaign. So reply routing is something that you get to manage when you hook up something like Mailgun, your own SMTP. Now you get to decide, what do I want to happen with these replies? Do I want them to go into my Gmail account? Do I want them to go into the software that I'm using? And then based on what they replied to, do I want to take some additional actions? Or maybe they didn't reply and now I want to take some actions because they didn't reply. So start thinking about all of the world that this opens up to you. It's not just, oh, I can have my own domain on the back because I'm using Mailgun. That's awesome. Now you have a domain match, but you just open up a whole nother world of tracking and triggering based on the people that you're sending to and what their actions or inactions are. The reason you want your own SMTP on the back is to get that domain match. So you are who you say you are. Remember, I showed you that big orange warning on the other lesson where I showed it said via mail.zohocalendar.com or whatever it was. No more via in the header. You are who you say you are all of a sudden. And no more warning messages. Those orange messages aren't going to say, oh, you should be careful with this email because they're saying they're this, but they're really that, because you get to control it. The second reason this is important when you're talking about having your own SMTP is brand recognition. The person who's receiving the email is seeing your brand only. They're not seeing Zoho Calendar or Active Campaign or Kajabi or anything like that. They're seeing your brand and only your brand. And you get control over your own sending reputation. And this is huge. This is like by far one of the biggest reasons for doing this is that when you're using a tool like Active Campaign or any of those tools where you can't connect your own backend, what ends up happening is you're writing on, remember those shared subdomains we talked about? Hundreds or thousands or who knows how many people are also using those same shared subdomains. And all of those people aren't necessarily in a room like this learning how to send email with excellent practices. They're not doing it so well a lot of times. Some of them are bringing cold lists to their Active Campaign account. And they're sending to those cold lists and they're getting high bounces and high complaints. And so what is that doing to the back-end subdomain that you're also using because you're one of the shared users on that subdomain? Just like Mama taught us, your reputation will precede you. When you show up at the door, basically the back end shows up first. I don't know how else to get that across, okay? But like, you're not approaching with the name tag that says Kristen at emailtoinbox.com. You're approaching with the back end subdomain. I'm going to just gently kind of scoot over here to the Google door and go, man, can you just let me in? I'm reply at emailtoinbox.com. So, and they go, oh, yeah. And then they turn around like, oh, cool, come into the best room in the house. That's what we're trying to do. The fourth reason is deliverability, because you are who you say you are. So that domain match actually does help you get better deliverability because you also control the reputation. So your next steps, what tools are you currently using for email sending? And who's controlling the back end? And I know a lot of you are using the same tools, and we've talked about them in previous lessons, so I kind of have an idea. But also think about the tools you used to use and why you don't want to go back, okay? What tools are you using for email sending? And it's not just your marketing tool. Do you have a Google account for your Gmail? Are you running your email through, GoDaddy? Yay. Is GoDaddy your email account? Because we should talk. And who's controlling the back end of that, by the way? Who's controlling the back end of your Gmail account? Google. Whose domains are you pushing those emails out on? Google. It's always going to be some derivative of gapssmtp.com on the back end with Google. And so when you send me an email just from your regular Gmail account, you're not marketing, you're like, hey, what's up, girl, right? The back end of that Google email that you're sending me is something.gapssmtp.com. No joke. Guess how many other people are using that? I don't know, a lot, right? And all those servers. And by the way, if you're sending cold email, what kind of accounts do you usually buy? A lot of them, by the way. What kind of a lot of accounts that you're buying to send all that cold email? A lot of people buy Google accounts, right? Okay, so they're using all those same servers too. So I had a little bit of an awakening on that when before I really got into the email, I was kind of just getting into the email stuff. And I was still calendaring from my Google Calendar. And I sent somebody an invite, through my Google Calendar. Because how hard can that? It's so easy. It's so easy. It's so tempting. And I hadn't really, done much with email. It was an email conversation that we were going to have. But the lady was like, hey, did you send that invite? Because I didn't get it. And I'm like, shoot. So can you check your spam? And sure enough, that's where my Google Calendar invite was in her spam folder. Now, how does that look if we're going to have a conversation about email deliverability? Yeah. Not good, right? And even if it wasn't about email deliverability, it's not good because she didn't know that the invite was there. So that was actually the day that I stopped calendaring off of Google and I moved everything into High Level. So I could I have my Google Calendar connected, but I do all my calendaring through High Level now, so I can send my own stuff. And then the last question is there an option for you to control your own backend? So as you're thinking about what you're doing right now, what system you're using, what system you're thinking about stopping using and moving, from and to, what's the backend, what are the options for controlling it?